Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's Dr. Janice Hooker Fortman with Relationship Matters TV. I hope everyone is having a beautiful morning, afternoon, or evening. Well, I always start my show with just a little bit of something I'd like to say. And I'm usually on my soapbox. And I thought I could get down off of my soapbox, but it seems as though I can't because now there's another variant. I think they're going to run out of letters soon, but this is BA something or other, whatever. But now it's reinfecting people with the COVID virus. What they're saying is that you should wear your mask, especially if you are indoors. You're not wearing your mask out there. Wear your mask, please, so we can get over this. We can get through with this. I know we're tired. I'm tired. I'm sick and tired of that mask, and sometimes I feel like I can't even breathe. But I don't want to get infected, and I don't want to infect you. So I'll get down off of my soapbox now. Well, I know that what we're going to talk about is something that the majority of us out there and in here really want to talk about. We want to talk about how to keep our marriages together. I tell my goddaughter all the time, it is, when they say marriage is work, they mean it. It is work. But we have a lovely couple on today. And let me find, I want to tell you a little bit about them before I bring them on. This is Jeeva and Sulojana. Wait a minute, let me get it right. Sulojana. And he told me how to pronounce it correctly. So if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, gotta forgive me, but you gotta tell me. But anyway, let me tell you about them. They have been married 30 plus years. And that also with pastoral expertise. They've created a unique mentorship process that guarantees breakthrough for married couples facing breakdown. They live in the Niagara region of Canada, and they are the parents of 3 married children. They're going to tell you a little bit more about themselves as we bring them in. So right now, I want to bring to you. Hi.
Hello.
You told me how to pronounce your name correctly. But say your name,
Yeah,
please.
you
Pronounce
were close enough.
close.
Sulojana.
That's what he told me. Sulojana.
Sulojana. Yeah.
Sulojana.
Yeah.
How are you all today?
We're doing great, thank
Yeah.
you.
You're doing
I'm
wonderful.
happy. I'm happy. I'm happy. Now, you know what? You say that you guarantee, and you very seldom get guarantees, but you guarantee for married couples on the brink of breakdown, you can fix all of that in as little as 10 weeks. You guarantee that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let me start with this. I have a question. And my question is, do you think all couples should have premarital counseling or coaching, even couples who've been married before?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was a pastor for over 35 years, and so I did my fair share of weddings, and so I always made sure that was very strictly enforced in our denomination that you could not get married until you went through some form of marriage preparation. Now, marriage preparation is a bit of a nebulous term in a way, because what that actually turns into in practice varies from place to place. So, for example, when I did marriage preparation, I always started people off by getting them to do an inventory. We used the prepare, enrich inventory, it's called, and then had a feedback session. And if that assessment showed it showed all the strengths and growth areas, I, shared that with them. They got a copy of that part of the report. And then, if there was something glaring showing that they really needed to address, then, we gave them some tools, or sometimes you referred them to someone else. They needed more help. But that was about the extent of it. At certain stage of my ministry, I used to do like a 6-week course where we used to bring couples together. Now our youngest son just got married, and the pastor that married him, he had pastor and his wife together, actually met with them, is it 6 times? Yeah, 6 times one-on-one, and went into great depth, in marriage preparation. So marriage preparation is absolutely necessary.
Mhm.
What we know now is that the more thorough it is, the better it is for the couple, because sadly, some of those couples that I did the 2 sessions with are not married anymore today.
Oh, okay. So now you're talking about marriage preparation, but I understand that you two had an arranged marriage. Okay. And so you didn't have the preparation. So you had never met each other. So, but you've been married over 38 years. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So we did meet. Maybe not like dating or anything like that. We met maybe 2 or 3 times before we got married in the presence of our family.
Yeah.
And
Only one time, one of those meetings, did I really have what we would call like a heart-to-heart conversation with her.
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they thought that was way too long. We didn't need that much time to get to know each other.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
This is 38 years ago, and it's the culture that we were brought up in. That's all I knew. And Jeeva was here in Canada already for a few years, but he was still ingrained in the Indian culture. So for me, that was normal. So, and it worked for our parents, our aunts, uncles. So that's all I knew, and I just believed it will work for us also. I knew there will be challenges, there will be difficulties, but the with the example our parents had, and the families had, I knew we will be able to get through.
Mm-hmm.
And also we had that faith. We come from the faith background.
Okay.
Having God in the midst of everything that we do. And we know, with the help of God, we can overcome any challenges that we may face. Yeah.
So did they choose you for him, or did they choose him for you? How did that work?
Well, the arranged marriage process works in 2 ways. Sometimes families will just, arrange between themselves. Families that know each other say, "Hey, I think our daughter would be a good match for your son," or the other way around. And so the marriage gets arranged that way. In our case, because our family was already in Canada for, I think it was about 7 years at that point, then the second method kicked in, which is where you work through a marriage broker. And so, so there are these people called marriage brokers. And so the marriage broker basically has a list of parents who are looking for a groom for their daughter, and another list of parents who are looking, for a bride for their son. And so they assess, the suitability of the couple for each other. And one of the things that factors into arranged marriages way more than it does in North America, in the traditional date and mate scene, is the importance of your families being compatible. And so you don't usually see marriages arranged where somebody is like really upper class, the other one is lower class, or different faith backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so when, for example, when our parents gave the broker a list of qualities, then they would basically stress those things. It has to be a Christian, has to have a degree, has to be really good looking.
And then no drinking, smoking, those kind of things were important for our parents. Also, the faith background.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And so the brokers, generally speaking, do a very good job of matching. And so what they do is, like in our case, the broker came to us and said, I believe I found a good match, for your son. He spoke to my dad. I wasn't involved in the conversation, and gave some details about Sulojana. And then my parents said to me, hey, it looks like there's a good match for you. How about we set up a time and go and see the girl and meet her family? And so that's how it gets going. It's essentially the families that do the arranging. You have a say in it. Like once we had our meeting, at that point, both of us had a veto. I could have said, no, we're not going to do this. Or she could have said, no, I don't like him. Not good looking enough for me, or whatever the reason may be. But the parents, they respect our wishes.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too, Dr. Janice, they also give not just one choice. They'll give you a few choices. With my parents, that's how it was. So you kind of go through a few before you pick one. So yeah.
Unless things really click with the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Then
you all clicked right away.
We clicked.
We believe.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so now you were in an arranged marriage. How did you decide to become marriage coaches? How did that come about?
Okay. So that actually happened very late in the process of, through our years of marriage. There was two decisive moments. One of them was just over 10 years ago. There's a Canadian Christian network called Crossroads, and they wanted to do something unique with the Love Dare. Do you remember the Love Dare that came out of the Fireproof movie many years ago?
Kind of.
Yeah, it was called the 40-Day Love Dare. The Fireproof movie was with Kirk Cameron. It was about a firefighter whose marriage was falling apart, and then his father-in-law gives him this book, and in the book called the 40-Day Love Dare, there were dares or challenges that he had to do every day, doing something pleasant for his wife that was a surprise, that type of thing. And so at the end of the movie, people wanted copies of the book because it worked so well. The only problem was there was no book. There were only 3 dares that were written to the movie script. So the producers actually came up with a book called the 40-Day Love Dare, and couples started to use it, and it was really impacting their marriages. And so this Christian television station said, we want to introduce that to our viewers. However, we want to add a twist to it. And the twist is, we're going to invite 3 couples who are at different stages of their marriage, to actually go through it for 40 days and give us a video report every day of what they did, how the dare went, and if they messed up or whatever. And so we were one of 3 couples that were chosen. And, and so we said, sure, yeah, we'll do it. It started to have an impact on our marriage. And even though at that point we'd been married for 26 years, I remember that.
Oh.
Yeah, there were still some things that that were in there that strengthened our marriage. And the other thing that happened is because of what people saw us reporting, we had couples contact us. Quite often, the ladies contacted us, not the guys, but the women contacted us and said, "Hey, I'm going through this. Can you pray for me? Can you give us some advice, etc." So anyway, when the whole season was over, the 40-day season was over, Sulojana turned to me and said,
I said to him, I think, God wants us to do something more in this. This is not the end. This is just the beginning of something. But Jeeva wasn't quite ready. He said, I've worked with, this was his, you have to tell the exact words. I'll try. I've worked with married couples before. many times. And
Yeah, and I said, Sulojana, I said, you don't want to go there because they'll suck the life out of you.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. So I was disappointed. I knew in my heart we are meant to do something more, because we would go somewhere and people would see us and they'll say, "Oh, you're the couple who are on that love there, on 100 Huntley Street," and right away it will, something will say in my heart, there is a need out there, for people, in marriages. People are, searching. And so I would again bring it up. And Jeeva said, no, we are not ready. We are not going to go there. So this went on for a few years. And then,
Yeah, and then I started to mentor some people. Most of them were business people, high achieving professionals in the marketplace, and I was bringing a faith perspective to them, teach them, how to hear the voice of God for their businesses, to make wise decisions, and so on. And these guys were doing really, really well, applying some of the foundational biblical principles that I was teaching them. But then it seemed like they were hitting a ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking this doesn't make sense because they're doing everything right, and they're not really progressing, exponentially. And so I just started praying and asking God, like, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? What should I be doing differently? And I just got this one sentence response from the Holy Spirit. He said, ask them how they're doing in their marriages.
Oh.
And so when I asked that question, I found out that like virtually every one of them, had some issue in their marriage. Like their marriage was not, like totally joyful, harmonious. Anyway, and so at that point, I'm like, okay, that's the bottleneck. And so I still didn't do anything, but all of a sudden I started getting phone calls. Not just from those guys I knew, but some others, totally random, would call me and say, "Hey, like we're having some difficulties in our marriage, and because of their profiles, they're high-profile people in leadership, we just don't want to go to anybody. Can you help us?" And so, so this just like kept on coming, and so after a while, I just couldn't resist anymore.
Okay.
Like resist the Holy Spirit, that is. And
Right.
so I said to Sulojana, "Okay, I think we're going to go for it and do something." And so that's how we actually got started with marriage mentorship.
so this was about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. About
Oh,
6 years ago. Yeah.
okay. So a question came in already. Okay. It says, as a pastor, what is the most difficult issue that you have had to help repair the marriage with one of your couples?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll go from both pastoring and from mentorship.
Okay.
One of the biggest issues we find is that people neglect their marriage. It's
Okay.
Yeah. In other words, you start taking each other for granted, and so like the things that you did before you got married or in the early years of your marriage. And I'm not saying it's going to be like all candlelight and wine and roses all the time. It can turn easily, but if you don't keep that up, you can easily turn into darkness and whining and cactus. And then you start rubbing each other the wrong way, being prickly. And so a lot of it is actually neglect that contributes to it. And people get very busy, with their work and or taking care of children, whatever the case may be. And really, can I just boil this down to one sentence? It is that you do not treat your spouse as the number one person in your life.
All righty. Okay.
So it's the priority, priority in your life.
Yeah. And so sometimes out of that, then people start doing stupid stuff, and that's where, emotional affairs start happening, and then move into physical adultery and so on. But like you can pretty well trace it all back, to that neglect, to lack of paying attention, to each other.
Communication.
Yeah. Building on a strong foundation. Yeah. It's really interesting, Dr. Jan, because I know, you also do coaching. People come to us, and because I do coaching on a spiritual level for business people and stuff. Everybody agrees in the business world today that we need coaches and mentors in our lives.
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to stay on track and then keep on reaching higher levels.
Yes.
The funny thing is, we think we can do marriage on our own. And marriage is probably the most committed relationship that you will be in. Marriage is probably the most involved and expensive enterprise that you enter into. And when I say expensive, not just cost, like money wise, but in terms of relationships and so on. And of course, when children come along, there's parenting. And if you get good models, then you'll do fine. And the models don't just have to be your own parents and grandparents. It could be people you connect with, in your church, in your workplace, community, wherever the case may be. But if you don't have it, you try and do it on your own, at some stage, you are going to run into issues. And that's why one of the things that like churches really need to be doing. And if you look at growing, thriving churches, they will almost always have something that is designed to keep marriage couples on their toes. Keep on reminding. There's not a whole lot new you teach them. You just have to keep on reminding them of the things that they keep on needing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, like a marriage ministry of some sort.
Yes. Yeah. But not just a social thing. Like I've known of marriage ministries where people just get together, have a good meal, listen to a speaker, go home, and nothing changes. No, like a real intensive involved marriage ministry is, I'll kind of be honest with you, I think the best model for marriage ministry that I've seen is something where you pair up a couple who are young in their marriage with someone who's been married for a few years, and you help them develop a personal relationship. Maybe they go through a curriculum, maybe they can take a book like ours and work through it together for 10 or 12 weeks, but then maintain an ongoing relationship. So when something comes up, and if your parents are not available to provide you with that, and unfortunately, a lot of times, if you're coming from a broken home, that's not available, then you have another couple with whom you established a relationship that can be there for you. And maybe sometimes they don't have to give you answers. They just need to wrap their arms around you and say, hey, it's going to work out. Don't worry. This is something that you have par for the course.
Okay. So how do you recapture, when you first meet and that first love and you feeling so good but then as time goes on, like you say, you end up taking each other for granted and not putting each other first. So how do you recapture that?
Yeah.
And is there ever a time when it's too late?
Yeah, lots of couples that we have dealt with so far, most of them, they're in major trouble. So what we try and do in the beginning is work on themselves first, because there's not much of a relationship. There are couples who come to us, they're not even looking at each other. So first of all, we teach them how to work on themselves, spending some quiet time with God, and some of the faith, the basic things.
I think another way to maybe phrase that would be they need to rebuild the foundation.
Okay.
And because of the where we come from in terms of our faith background and so on, there are a couple of principles that are at work through our mentorship that are actually responsible for providing the kind of results and the guarantee that we offer. Number one is to recognize that God created us as spirit beings with a soul in a body. In other words, like a lot of times when somebody has a problem, a behavioral issue, they try to change things at the behavioral level.
Okay.
And that will go on for a little while, especially if you have some reinforcement, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Somebody will change. If you don't stop your drinking, then I'm out of here, buddy. Okay. Well, that will force somebody to change if they want to change. But that change will not last long if the problem has to do with something that is from their soul, which is their mind, will, and emotions, or something that is spiritual. Like what do we mean by spiritual? I'll boil this down very simply because of time. A lot of spiritual issues in a marriage have to do with forgiveness.
Mm. That's,
Yeah. If couples learn to forgive each other very quickly, we'd be out of business.
Okay.
So we have to teach people some of these basic things, and so it's not just about, get yourself a date night going. Yes, date night is good and it needs to be part of it. That's one of the
Yeah.
healthy things that we do teach, but that's not the starting point. That's an outgrowth of what happens on the inside. And so Sulojana started hinting on something. I'll just say this and then hand it over to her. We have a saying that there are no such things as marriage problems, but people with their own problems coupled together in a marriage.
Okay.
So in the Indian tradition, when you come into marriage, you bring your dowry with you. In the Western context, when you come into a marriage,
You bring your baggage.
You
Yeah.
bring your baggage. Yeah, you bring your mom,
right.
your dad, your grandpa, previous generations, your bad experiences,
Yeah.
trauma.
Any kind of abuse. So if they are not dealt with, it will show up. You're seeing everything through that lens at your spouse. So that's where like Jeeva said, the forgiveness, and we send our couples to train people who can go through whatever they've gone through in the early years of their life. Lots of forgiveness prayers, and just to clean themselves up, so that they can have a good relationship, healthy relationship with their spouse. So that's how it starts.
Yeah. Well, you've heard the saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in a marriage, if you have two people who have, and I prefer to use the word unhealed. If they have, we all have wounds, but if we have unhealed wounds that we come into the marriage with, or that we inflict on each other during the marriage, and we don't seek healing for those wounds, then we will continue to hurt each other. And so that's one of the big things we focus on, is healing each other, each of them individually, so they can function together as two healed people relating to each other. So now they don't want to hurt each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and they find it easier to forgive, and they're both on common ground. And this is another big issue, is that because no two of us are alike coming into a marriage. As a matter of fact, most of the time opposites attract. And so our backgrounds are different, even our level of maturity, in faith, in emotional health, may be very, very different. And so unless we have some common ground, some common principles, some common practices, and that's what we start teaching them right off the bat, beginning at the spirit level, and then we take that into conflict resolution, communication, and so on. But when both people are on the same ground, huge difference. And that's what really our marriage mentorship does for couples.
Okay, so let me ask you this. I know you come from a Christian perspective, but what about, do you have clients or couples that are not Christian? Do you work with them, and how does that work?
Okay. Well, so far in our experience, simply because of my pastoral background and the communities where people know us, virtually all the couples that have come to us, I would say virtually every couple that has come to us is from a Christian background.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe one, there are cases where one person's faith is stronger than the other spouse.
One is more actively practicing their faith, where the other one is. Yeah, so they are, like on different levels, even though they wouldn't label themselves as people of different faith. Now, it's funny. I actually ran, our book and our mentorship by a mentor of mine, Brian Kurtz, who was Jewish, and Brian said to me, Jeeva, yes, you are writing this from a Christian perspective, but what you are sharing in your book is something that any couple can use.
Yes.
Because the principles are universal. We provide a solid biblical foundation for everything that we have in the book. However, somebody who has a very different faith background, or maybe even has no faith connection, can still take and apply a lot of the stuff that we have in the book, if they can get past, the terminology, or the religious lingo that is in there.
Okay. So I gotta take a quick break, and we will come back because there are other questions that have come in, and I want to try to get all of them in. So we'll be right back right after this. All right, we are back with Jeeva and Sulojana.
Doing good.
Okay, all right. Now okay, so one of the questions that came in is, has there been a relationship that you've worked on and it just didn't work? They just ended up splitting up anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. And the reason is because it takes two to make a relationship work.
Okay.
Yeah. And so if one person decides, at some point that like they don't have the will to keep it going and keep working, then at that point, sadly, like our hands are tied. And so that does happen.
But not too many, just a few.
Yeah.
We can count the number of them. Yeah. That's right.
But it does happen, and that's why one of the things when we take somebody on to work with, we really probe them at that point when they start working with us to make sure that both are 100% committed to making the relationship work. And if we don't sense that, we don't take them on.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, and we basically get them to check off like a box when we have the initial intake form. And if they say the husband is more, keen about it than the wife or the other way around, we will still meet with them just to make sure what level of commitment they do have.
Mm-hmm.
And but if they don't have that to start, we'll say, sorry, like individual counseling is probably better for you,
Okay.
because our process, because we want to get them both on common ground, and for both of them to be on common ground, they both need to be in the same space, the same place.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We
So
learned lots of this, the hard way. We used to take on anybody, and sometimes we felt like we wanted their marriage to work more than them. So
okay.
Yeah. And
yeah.
and just so you know, the money back guarantee, results guaranteed or money back, for somebody to qualify for that, we expect them to do some daily disciplines,
Mm.
and keep accountable to us. We have an accountability tracker that they have to check off every day, and they cannot miss a day. If they miss a day, then they forfeit the guarantee. And so we
Oh.
hold their feet to the fire. Now, I'm not going to say that every couple that has got the breakthrough has been 100% perfect, but they're very close. They may miss one day here or there,
Mm.
and we can pretty well tell, like when somebody starts, being a little bit lax about it, and we call them on it. Like we've had a couple of times, where we actually let one couple go, because they would not maintain the daily accountability.
One of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of the two
The two,
would not do it. And so it's like, guys, you're wasting your time
the one spouse.
and money with us, so let's just end this right now.
Mhm.
And when you're ready to do it together, then we can talk. And so we're very, very particular about that, and that's another ingredient in our whole process that actually makes it work, is that very strict accountability.
Okay. So now there are two usually main reasons when marriages kind of start having challenges. And one is money,
Mhm.
and the other one is usually sex. So, do couples come to you and there's just this issue? You see that, they really want to work it out, but there's this money issue. So, what examples have you had where the couples came in and it was all about money? And what did you do about it?
Okay. Well, money unfortunately causes way more stress than it ought to in a marriage, and way out of proportion, to any other factor. And it's because money is our blood, sweat, and tears. It's not just like a dollar bill here and there. And so the two issues that often cause a lot of stress in marriage with finances, one is debt. If they've gotten themselves into some bad spending habits and max out credit cards, that type of thing, then quite often, like, one person will get blamed for it, and that rightly so. In our case, this is actually a very real life example. I wish you hadn't asked the question, but but I was the one that actually racked up a lot of credit card debt that she didn't know about, which is the second issue in finances, is the lack of transparency. And so for example, like, we've dealt with couples who once had like a gambling problem. Never The other person never knew about it, or one kept on sending money to a few other people, family, and so on, but the other person didn't know about it. Secret bank accounts, debts to friends, loans to friends, that type of thing. So that's one. But the biggest issue, Sulojana, with finances is what?
The-
Okay, I put it on the spot. Okay,
Yeah.
is that people don't have a budget to work with.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Like, they don't do it together. Now it's true that in most marriages, one person is better with handling money than the other. But when you don't know, like, for example, in our case, I pay all the bills. So now Slojana knows what the bills are, but the last thing she wants to do is to be responsible for it.
Okay.
And by the way, that's how we got into the mess in the first place, because I was doing all of that and she didn't care and didn't want to know. But once we hit the crisis point, then one of the first things we decided was that, like, every month, just prior to the beginning of a month, I would sit down and drop a budget, put all the bills that I know that were coming, how much income was coming, and then we would both sit together on the first of the month or around there somewhere. And so she knows the financial picture exactly the same way that I do.
Okay.
Right? And
Yeah. We took a course actually. It's called
was with Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey,
Financial Peace
Yeah,
University.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to listen to him all the time.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I think I
very.
have a CD or a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where we learned lots of good things, and learned how to budget.
Yeah.
And that helped us a lot to get out of debt.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say a word about why Dave Ramsey, because both of us were raised in families with different financial philosophies of finances. And so that's one of the reasons why we couldn't see eye to eye. Like Sulojana's family, like, your dad.
Yeah, he said, we were brought up where we shouldn't borrow any money to, even for things, schooling, or even little things, or to big things like buying a house. You always save it up and then buy and then purchase. Never go into debt. That's how I was brought up. And
whereas I mean, my parents were also very responsible with their money, but they were okay with taking loans for certain purposes, as long as you had the capacity to pay it off. Now I took that to the nth degree. So for me, affordability meant affordability of the payments. For her, affordability meant you had the whole enchilada saved up first. And so we used to clash about finances all the time. And so finally it came to a point where we said, you know what, we're going to pick a third party. We're going to learn from that person. Whatever they tell us to do, we're going to follow religiously for a year without questioning. And you're not going to add your variation, and I'm not going to get in the way, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that was a big help. And your second question was with regards to sex. Yeah. I think I'll start. When all the other issues that we talked about are taken care of, the communication, the roots of the past abuse and those kind of things are all taken care of, Dr. Janice, the sex thing will come naturally. So these are the hindrances, that kind of brings a wall between the couples. So once we take care of all of this, the sex is kind of, at the end, in the final, kind of the thing that we get the couples to work on. And
it's one of the later chapters in our book, actually. Even though people like Sulojana said, some of them don't even look at each other. Obviously, they're not touching each other, so they're definitely not having sex with each other. And then by about week 9, we can tell they're having sex with each other.
And that's something you don't want to force on each other, especially the women. It has to come naturally, and you have to have that love, love between each other. So it's not an easy thing, but we tell them, don't worry about that, especially with the men. Don't worry about that. It will come naturally, once you work the other things out.
And again, in our book, we actually outline, quite a few reasons for sexual dysfunction in a marriage. And I can't go through all of them, but I'll just mention a couple of things. One of them is just the way men and women view sex differently. For men, there's a lot of emphasis on the physical pleasure, and the need for that release and oxytocin, all that kind of stuff. For women, sex is very much tied into emotions.
Emotions, right?
So one of the sayings that we have, is that like don't expect. If you treat your wife like dirt during the day, don't expect her to treat you like gold at night.
Whoa.
Yeah. In other words, the like affection outside in the course of daily life has a lot to do with what happens when you want to be intimate with each other. And so generally speaking, and we cannot generalize because some men are more emotional than their wives, but generally speaking, men really need to work at strengthening their emotional connection with their wives. And so for me, that didn't come naturally. And so I relied on Sulojana. So
Okay.
whenever she asked, how are you feeling? Rather than saying, what do you want to know that for? Don't pry into me. It's like, she's longing for emotional connection. So I better take that seriously, sit down and have some of those heart to heart conversations, where, like it doesn't seem like much to me, but for Sulojana, that means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like tuning in, actually,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
right. And as you said, women, we're more into not the physical, but the emotional.
Emotion. Yeah.
Yeah. So just kind of briefly give me the steps. Like, I know you have an assessment when they first come in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then after that, what do you do? Do you see them separately and then together, or together in the beginning? How does it work?
Well, we have weekly sessions scheduled with the couples, and that's with both of them together.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
In the
yeah.
very beginning.
Right from the get-go.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Because we want to get them on this common ground. And
Okay.
so when we get the assessment done, we share the results with both of them, simultaneously, so they know, what's in the assessment. And we also ask them, like, do you agree with this? What this assessment says, is this accurate? Because assessments can sometimes miss things, and so we get their involvement. One of the other interesting things we found also helpful is to have them to go through the love languages quiz. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's not that you don't love each other, but the way in which you express your love doesn't convey
Yeah.
love to your spouse.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that often is an eye-opening exercise for people. And so once we get the assessments done, then our process starts out by building or rebuilding the foundation at
Okay.
the beginning at the spirit level. And
Okay.
so what we've essentially found is that there are 10 habits that if you learn to develop these, and some of them are things you do on your own. Like for example, Slodna talked about spending some time in silence earlier on. That's something you do on your own, or your Bible reading. In our case, you do that on your own. But there are also some things you do together, like praying together as a
Okay.
couple, which unfortunately a lot of Christian couples don't do. Well. We actually read a survey result that many pastors don't actually pray with their spouses on a regular basis. They have a great prayer life on their own. So
Mm.
some of these things. So we start with that.
And then the common things are like journaling, journaling,
Like a gratitude journal.
gratitude journal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sharing with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the second section that we do is probably the toughest one in a way. That takes the longest time, and that's what we call removing spiritual blockages. And so that's when we really go deep down inside of them, and this is where they will do a lot of work on their own. But the thing that we do, Dr. Jan, is that midweek we have an extra session, and that is where I will meet with the man and Slojan will meet with the lady. Usually over the phone. It's kind of a
Yeah.
checkup session. So at that time, if there are some things that come up that they want to bring up, that they may not be comfortable sharing with their
Mhm.
spouse present,
Yeah.
then that gives them the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a checkup thing, we do
Okay.
it midweek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the process of, we teach them some things that they can do on their own, but it's in that segment that we also send them to someone who's got a specialty in doing what we would call inner healing ministry. So that is healing all those hurts that you've been maybe holding on to yourself. And one of the things we're becoming more aware of right now is that when there's trauma involved, we need more help than that. So we need to do a referral to a trained therapist, who can help them really go deep. And I'm sure you find this in your practice, Dr. Jan.
Yeah.
Sadly, there's a lot of trauma that
Yeah.
people have been impacted by, especially in their early years,
Yeah.
sometimes in their marriage, but more often than not, it goes back to your childhood years.
Yes. I
Yeah,
just spoke with someone about why they fear rejection so much so that they sabotage
yeah,
their love relationships,
yeah,
and
Mm.
that's from way back.
yeah,
Yeah.
way back
Yeah.
to her father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Father wounds, unfortunately, are very common with women,
Yeah,
and some men as well. Who cannot live up to the expectations of their fathers, or cannot forget about the wounds, the wounding, the hurtful words, and so
yeah,
on. So that spiritual blockages is
Mhm.
a tough process, but and we always tell couples, don't expect to see any big results for at least the first 5 weeks, because
okay,
we're going to be doing some deep digging on the inside. And once we've got that taken care of, help them to forgive each other and they get to that place. Now we teach them how to restore peace following a conflict. Because we know that, like in every marriage, there's going to be conflict. And so you expect conflict, but conflict by itself is not bad. I think conflict is always a good sign that two people are communicating. However, how you resolve conflict can be either good or bad. It can be helpful or it can be hurtful.
Yeah.
Right?
now I don't want to. We got maybe what 6 minutes, but I want to show them your book.
Mhm.
So yeah, the Unbreakable Marriage. So now, in this book, do you go through the steps that you have been talking about?
Yes, yeah, everything is in that book. There are action steps at the end of each chapter that you can go through. We're also producing a workbook
Mhm.
Oh,
that you can use.
Yeah.
So what we encourage couples to do is get a copy of the book, but also get a copy of each for of the workbook rather for each of you, and then work on it together. And the best way I believe people are going to get results is by working with the mentoring couple, not necessarily us. Not everybody may be at the stage where they need someone like us to come in and and work with them in great depth. But find a mentoring couple. Part of it is to keep them accountable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah. But also, when something comes up that you're not sure about, there's somebody there to clarify things for you.
okay.
From their experience.
So we have this quick question. It's probably not a quick answer, but Renita Dixon wants to know, and we got maybe 3 minutes. What is your advice for singles who would like to be married but don't have great role models?
Okay.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, this is the case for a lot of singles today. And so, my simple answer to you would be become the best you that you can be. In other words, like what we talked about, the removing spiritual blockages and so on. When you're married, you do that separately as a husband and the wife. When you're single, you do that for yourself. And so you take care of your past hurts, your past
Mhm.
trauma, and so that and forgive those poor role models that you had. That's a big part of it. A lot of us have to forgive our parents, for not setting the right example for us. And so that's a huge part of becoming free on your own. And you know what, you will attract the right kind of person when you are healed. when
Okay.
when you're carrying hurts, unhealed hurts, you're going to find somebody that looks like they're going to address those hurts for you, but they may be actually looking to you to heal their wounds.
Ah,
And that is not a good combination. And
right.
that's why one of the things we tell couples, singles that come to us, that were engaged, for example, guys, take care of all this baggage before you get married, so that you don't have to come to see us. Like, prepare adequately before you get to the repair stage of your marriage.
Okay. All right. Now, if people want to get in contact with you and have an unbreakable marriage, then they can email you
Yes.
Yeah.
at jeevasam@gmail.com, or they can go on your website. And I think when they go on your website, they'll see the link where they can get, I guess, an excerpt of your book.
Yeah, actually, you know what, Dr. Jan, your audience right now, if this is only for a limited time that we're offering this, if you go there, you will actually get to download a PDF of the entire book for free.
Shut your mouth.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
yeah,
wonderful. Okay,
we,
people, I'm leaving it up there so you can see it.
yeah, and we
Oh
also
my
have a
goodness.
little teaching, a video teaching on restoring peace following a conflict. If you click on that, there's a calendar link, and so if you do need help, get on our calendar, and we'll be happy to meet with you, give you a free consultation that we would normally be charging $500 for. So we're glad to give that to you. But if you have any questions, just send us an email or text me at that number, and I'll respond to every one of them.
Thank you. I got to get my copy. I think that is so wonderful. And you know what? I have a very close friend that wants to get married, and I tell her marriage is work, and it's not all fantasy land like she thinks
Yeah.
it is. But I am definitely going to direct her to your website so she can get a copy of your book. You know, this hour is not been quite, it's going by so fast.
Yeah, very fast.
We didn't even get to. But oh my goodness, thank you so much. Your service and what you are doing is so valuable, and it's so much needed. It really, really is. So I want to thank you really for appearing on the show. And also, I just want to tell people this: if they want to see you, they can go to YouTube. So just look for Jeeva Sam, and you click on YouTube, it will come up. They will come up if you don't go directly to their channel. So thank you so much. But after, even though I'm going to close out the show, I don't want you to go anywhere. Okay?
Okay.
Let you know.
All right. We'll
Okay.
wait.
Please do. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
You're welcome. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm going to leave this up here so folks can see this. Yes, indeed. This has been great. I know you all got a lot of value. And if you know some couples and they're not on tonight, direct them to my YouTube channel, Dr. Janice Hooker Fortman, or my Facebook page so they can watch this, because to me, this was an extremely important episode. So I want to thank all of you all for tuning in, and I want you to come back next week when I'm going to have someone who's going to talk to us about getting our stories from our ancestors, from our grandmothers, great-grandmothers, just so we can see exactly where we came from. And she's going to show us how to do it. Actually, we know about ancestry, but she has a unique way of finding the stories from the past. So I am so happy again that you all came this evening, and I know you got a lot of value from this. So I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.